Cowboys Mandatory Minicamp is essentially over. Dak Prescott is having the best offseason of his life. Mike Zimmer is helping out the offense. And some more comments on the Micah Parsons situation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, and catching up with the guys in between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with these quick hitting videos. Today is Wednesday night, and Cowboys minicamp is essentially over. It is a 3-day period, but the Cowboys are canceling the third day of practice, which is not unusual. Under Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys have called off several practices at OTAs, at minicamp, but that doesn't mean players are going home. The Cowboys are actually going to be spending time, team bonding experiences, things of the sort. Mike McCarthy revealed today that they're going to be doing some work with O2X, excuse me. And this is a special program that tries to help organizations really reach peak performance. Some of you might remember this, but last year, Dak Prescott actually hired this same company to work with the offensive players during the offseason. So he got together a lot of the receivers, a lot of the linemen, even, I think. They got together in Dak's home, I believe. I'm not sure where the exact location was. And Jory Epstein did an article about it for Yahoo. And it was a pretty cool story about how Dak wanted to gain a mental edge through this program, through this workshop. I remember is the word that was used back then. They framed it as a kind of like a 5-session workshop where they went through several situations to try to help them deal with high stakes situations. And this, of course, with the objective of getting the Cowboys in a position where maybe they wouldn't crumble in the playoffs or something like that. Ironically, that's what happened, though, in January. But, we're not talking about that right now. I did find it interesting, though, that the Cowboys, and obviously all kidding aside, it likely helped Dak Prescott, right? He had his best season ever in the NFL, was second, in MVP voting. He was a second-team All-Pro. He was all that. So it obviously helped to some degree. But I find it interesting that now the Cowboys are adopting it to a team-wide level. So now it's not only Dak doing it on his dime, on his time. This is the full Cowboys team that is doing so in minicamp. And I would assume it has to do with the fact that the quarterback on the offense actually worked on it last offseason. So that's what the Cowboys are going to be doing on Thursday. So don't expect a lot of practice notes going into Thursday. Basically, what we know is what we know so far. I don't think that we have a lot of minicamp notes, but we'll talk about some on today's show. We'll start with some Mike Zimmer commentary, and we'll go to Mike McCarthy's comments on Dak Prescott, but also some notes on, for example, Trey Lance, Jalen Brooks, and much more here on the show. So welcome, everyone. Hit the like button for me, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show. Let's start with the Mike Zimmer conversation, and I'm going to read you the quote from Mike McCarthy. That's what we do here on the show. We'll break down all that it means. Mike McCarthy was asked about the progress of rookie offensive linemen Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton. And that's obviously two potential new starters on the Cowboys offensive line. So they're not any rookies, right? They're going to be crucial for the Cowboys' success. So you want to listen to only positive stuff when it comes to these two guys. One who is a high upside project, the other one who is a high floor starter that, even though he's a third-round draft pick, many people expect to make an immediate impact on the team, as he is the projected starting center for many people, myself included. I think that week one, the center with the highest probability of being a starter is Cooper Beebe, above Brock Hoffman, above Dakota Shepley, TJ Voss, who's also seeing work at center. I think that Cooper Beebe is the man to beat, if I'm being honest with you. So, and by the way, to back that up, also, one of the notes that I've seen out there, and I believe I saw these from Kyle Humans from the Dallas Cowboys network, Cooper Beebe is work exclusively at center. So it doesn't sound like he's working at guard or anything like that. And this is the actual tweet from Kyle Humans. He said, BV is working consistently at center and he is getting reps with multiple quarterbacks, which I would interpret as big news for Cooper Beebe. Honestly, that's how I view it. If he's getting work with Dak, but also with Trey and everything, hell yeah, man. I think that sounds like he is going in the right direction. So, anyways, Mike McCarthy had this to say about the rookie offensive lineman, and you'll see what I mean with the Mike Zimmer thing. We are clearly way ahead of where we were this time last year, which I think it's pretty significant because he's talking about the offensive linemen, by the way, and the rookies. I think that's significant because, man, last year your offensive linemen were veterans, right? You had Tyron Smith, you had Tyler Viadish. So that's a big statement right there from Mike McCarthy. I'll actually read you the entire quote. He said, the biggest thing is really getting the scheme and the fundamentals. I think just like anything, every year you have to teach your team how to practice. CBA practice is a different kind of practice, so I think they're getting everything at the rate of speed and timing that fits this training regiment. They're understanding. I've been very impressed with the young guys. They've picked it up very well. We are way ahead of the game as far as what we do on offense, protection-wise. We're clearly way ahead of where we were this time last year. Some commentary on that from my part. Mike McCarthy also is talking about the fact that he overhauled the pass protection scheme when he took over the offense. So now this is year 2 of the Mike McCarthy protection scheme, but it still speaks volumes about the work that they've done, where he's talking about how they're ahead of where they were last year protection-wise when he's dealing with 2 rookie offensive linemen in the potential starting lineup. Anyway, he adds, what a great experience for our young guys to now practice against Mike Zimmer's pressure defense. They've been getting all the tough overload pressure looks and things like that. So I think those guys have done a really nice job. And that is a very good point. I've always praised Dan Quinn for the way that he was able to rush the passer with Micah Parsons and the way that he consistently found ways to give Micah a mismatch. How many times did Dan Quinn find a way to get Micah one-on-one against an offensive guard, against a center? Every week, it was like a guarantee that the Cowboys were going to find the weak link of the opposing offensive line and ensure that Micah was going to be able to exploit it. That being said, though, I think Zimmer's defense is more complex when it comes to its pressure looks. Because, one, it's going to be able to rush the passer in different ways. I think he does the double A gap stuff that people like to talk about, but there's so much more to it. There's a rotating safeties. There's the simulated pressures as well. And when you're talking about an offensive lineman that is coming into the NFL, and I'm going to talk about Cooper Beebe here, and they're asking him to learn how to play center, and that goes way beyond just snapping the football. He's being tasked with calling out protections, pointing towards the mic, telling the linemen where they're going to slide, doing all of that. Dealing with a simulated pressure is as complicated, if not more, than dealing with an all-out blitz look, Because there's so many variables with simulated pressures where the defensive coordinator is trying to produce offensive linemen that are blocking nobody, right? That's what you're looking for with a simulated pressure. You want to see the center and the guard block air and be out there on the field by themselves while the other guys are working on one-on-ones, and you're keeping the numbers in coverage. That's basically what simulated pressures do. And they're complicated to figure out. That's why they're one of the biggest trends in defensive football in the NFL these days. So for Mike McCarthy to be out there and talking about how they're dealing with the Zimmer's pressures and they're doing it well, I think that's a very clear sign that Mike Zimmer is helping out not only the defense, but the offense develop. And I think that's huge. That's a comment that, it was a small, subtle comment maybe from Mike McCarthy, but that's one of those that when you're listening to a press conference, you go like, oh, that's actually a pretty good point. That's worth talking about on the show. That's worth bringing up with the A to Z Sports Dallas people, man, right? So that got me a little bit excited. I'm not going to lie. Mike Zimmer obviously is going to be huge for the Cowboys defense. I know that Dan Quinn led the number one defense in EPA per play over the last 3 years. So expecting an overall improvement would be very optimistic, especially since the Cowboys, it wasn't like they overhauled the defensive tackle position or anything like that. But it is still a defense that is likely going to be better against the run just because of the way that Zimmer runs his scheme, right? It's not going to be as aggressive. It's not going to be as dependable on the fact that they will load the box, right? I think Mike Zimmer is going to have a much more versatile defense. That part of it is very exciting. But anyways, Zimmer not only helping out the defense, helping out the offense as well. Before I move on to the Dak Prescott stuff, very quickly, I will say this regarding the Micah Parsons show yesterday. I saw some comments, and I see the discourse online on social media as well. There's a chunk of the Cowboys fan base that is not enjoying the Micah Parsons conversation. And I totally get it. I want to move on as well. But I will say this. I think yesterday's show, which was about how Micah essentially said, in my opinion, that he was expecting some disagreements right with Zimmer, that he made some funny comments. And if you want to check out that show, you can do so. It's on the channel right now. I saw some people that were not happy with the way that it was framed. But man, I do think it's a conversation. And you can go watch the interview. And even though he says it somewhat lightheartedly, he still says it. That kind of felt like he was sneaking those comments into the commentary, even though he was friendly about it and had a smile on his face when he said it. But you can go check it out for yourself, right? Also, I would recommend you check out John Machota joining Jeff Kavanaugh just about minutes before I started recording this. I like hearing John Machota say some of the stuff that, fits with what we've talked about here on Primetime, where it's like, sure, Micah missed OTAs last year, but last year we did not see an upset of Mike McCarthy. Dak Prescott talked to the media today, and he said that he wished Micah would have been there in OTAs. So again, not a big drama, but I also think acting as if it's nothing is also kind of like our fandom bidding us a little bit. And we don't like to do that here on Primetime. We like to talk about Cowboys football with truth, right? We like to tell it like, we like to call a spade, if you will. But anyways, Mike McCarthy also talked about Dak Prescott. Man, let me share you the quote very quickly here. I'm going to open an article for A to Z Sports. You can go check it out on the website, the full story by Kelsey Kramer. Mike McCarthy said, "I think Dak is having his best offseason program that we've had. And he's had really good offseason programs the whole time. I think this atmosphere that we practice in, the receivers and the quarterback have really hit the mark. I'm really impressed with the quality of work. I think the offensive perimeter and quarterbacks have really excelled through this offseason program. I think that they have taken a step." This I like to hear. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to put too much talk on the Dak Prescott thing. Like, hey, he might be having his best offseason, sure. It's kind of like something that we hear about everybody every year, it seems to me. But I like to hear the part about the receivers, though, because CeeDee Lamb is not around. And it sounds to me like there's been a lot of Jalen Brooks, Jalen Tolbert praise over the last few days, right? I would like to talk more to somebody that's been there, somebody that's been with boots on the ground, right? Watching practice, doing all that. But it sure sounds like the Jalens, we can start calling them the Jalens, I guess. Just don't include Jalen Cropper. And Jalen Cropper is having a good minicamp. Don't get me wrong, but he's on a different tier than Tolbert and Brooks. I think we can agree with that. But sounds like those two are doing a good job. And it sounds to me that there's going to be a competition for wide receiver 3 when training camp begins in July. Now, McCarthy was very clear that this is the time of the year that the quarterback and the wide receivers can really shine because there's no contact and all that. But I like to hear that, man. I really liked to hear that because of the receivers more than anything else. Brandon Cooks has talked about the fact that Dak Prescott is looking stronger and his arm has a better zip to it. I think the biggest thing about Dak is simply the fact that he's going to be working with Mike McCarthy for the second year. And it might be simplifying things, but first year on Mike McCarthy's offense, he played his best football, period. As simple as that. And you might argue it took a little bit longer than we would have thought for the Cowboys pass offense to really get it going in 2023, but it got going. And at some point, man, that's all I care about. I care about the Cowboys doing things the way that they did them when the offense was truly clicking, when they were running a ton of pre-snap motion and they were forcing the ball to CeeDee Lamb. Not that they need to force it every single time, but when the Cowboys offense played its best football, it was when CeeDee was getting 10 plus targets per game, if we're being honest. And they were doing everything with them. He was lining up as the isolated receiver. He was working on this a lot. He was doing everything. They were just getting CeeDee the ball, and that's what we wanted for a long, long time. We can talk about the playoff game as well, but that was the exception. I want to see more of what we saw in the regular season. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, ran a little bit longer than usual with the pre-recorded show. Sorry about that, man. But man, last day of minicamp, I think it was only fair. I'll be back tomorrow with another recorded video. And then Sunday, the same. I'm going to be out of town, so we won't have the live shows. I'm headed to Mexico's Bowl, which is Mexico's version of the Super Bowl. But to make it up to you, we are going to come back with a banger next Thursday night when we do a live show again, because we're going to have a crossover show on A to Z Sports Dallas. Skywalker Steele is going to be joining me Thursday the 13th. So start marking your calendars and don't forget about that day. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for me tonight here on the show. Appreciate you as always. Hit the like button for me. Bye-bye.